Hi, I'm Elizabeth, and today I want to talk about what to do if you've had a really rotten night's sleep. We've all been there. The staring at the ceiling for hours, the tossing and turning, the kids are getting you up at all hours of the night. Whatever the cause, the next morning you drag yourself out of bed, exhausted, depleted, fatigued, brain full of what feels like cobwebs, and you have a hard time functioning. This happens to everybody once in a while. But I'm going to give you 6 tips that will help you get through that day and then get a great night's sleep the next night to reset and start your next day on the right foot. Tip number 1 is get up at your normal time. It can be very tempting to stay in bed for an extra 10, 20, 30 minutes, couple hours, whatever you have. And while that might feel great in the moment, that can actually totally throw your schedule off. When you're going to bed and getting up relatively consistently every day, when we throw that off, our body feels like it's actually we've been jet lagged. It's in a different time zone and it can completely reset your circadian rhythm. So if you're sleeping in too long, it's actually going to throw off your sleep or has the possibility of throwing off your sleep later that night. It might feel awful having to get up at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock when you haven't really slept at all, but I guarantee it's going to ensure a much better night coming up. And you will be able to get through the day with a couple of these other suggestions I'm going to make. So really, as much as you can, try to get up at the same time in the morning. Tip number 2, go easy on the coffee. I know this is probably not going to be a popular idea either, and you're just going to want to hook up an IV and get that coffee straight into your veins, but that is actually going to backfire on you as well. Couple of reasons why. Coffee can interfere with sleep. It kind of blocks some sleep hormones that are important. And when we drink coffee or caffeine in general too late in the day, it can really interfere with our ability to fall asleep that night. When we're feeling exhausted, depleted, completely fatigued, it's pretty common for us to say, okay, I'm just going to sip on coffee all day to help keep me awake. And while I get the idea behind that, where it backfires is even if you're exhausted, that caffeine will potentially keep you up that night. My recommendation is you're allowed to have your coffee, absolutely. Have maybe a couple cups of coffee in the day, cut it off by about noon. And after that, you can start focusing on something else. So water, just sipping water throughout the day can help keep you alert. Tea is a nice warm drink that can kind of have a similar feel to coffee. I know it doesn't quite have the same kick. Yes, tea has caffeine in it. The caffeine in tea, even green tea, typically doesn't affect people as much as coffee does. That is very individual though. So if you do find that tea or green tea keeps you up at night, I would cut that off around noon as well and stick to herbal teas in the afternoon. But substituting something instead of the coffee can kind of help you feel awake, even if you're not getting the same jolt that caffeine would give you, but it's going to ensure you're going to sleep much better that night. Tip number 3, get moving in the morning. I know you're exhausted and the last thing you want to do is exercise, but a walk, yoga, some stretching, just moving your body is going to help you in 2 ways. Number 1, it spikes your cortisol. This is going to help you feel awake. It's going to help you feel more alert. And number 2, that cortisol spike is going to help start your circadian cycle again for the day. So you'll be ready for bed at the right time later that day. So it does not have to be vigorous activity, something simple and slow, but just some movement in the morning is going to pay off big time. The other side of that as well is to keep moving throughout the day. So whenever you feel like you're kind of getting that head bob or you're sort of feeling tired and fatigued, get up from your desk and just move around. It doesn't need to be an hour-long walk, just like, jog in place for a couple seconds. Moving in general is going to help you feel better. So moving in the morning for sure, and then quick little bursts of movement throughout the day is going to actually replace that caffeine and help keep you help keep your energy up throughout the day. Tip number 4, be mindful of your hunger. Sleep does funny things to our hunger hormones. So when we're sleep deprived, it spikes the hormone ghrelin. Ghrelin's job is to make you feel hungry. I don't know if you've ever noticed this feeling when you're really, really fatigued, but your hunger levels tend to go up. It's because your hormone that says I'm hungry is up. At the same time, the hormone leptin goes down, and leptin's job is to tell us that we're feeling satisfied, that we're feeling full. So when we're sleep deprived, our body is artificially telling us that we're hungry, and also artificially telling us that we're not full. So it can be really difficult to kind of track what our real hunger is whenever we're exhausted. This isn't to say that you can't fuel yourself or you can't eat when you're exhausted. You absolutely should. And if you're feeling like, I don't know, fill in the blank, whatever it is, chips, popcorn, a treat, cookie, whatever it is that you're kind of feeling like, that's fine. But just be aware of what is actually driving it. Because really, when you're aware that, okay, I shouldn't be hungry right now, or am I really hungry right now, or am I just hungry because I'm exhausted? When we have that awareness, we're going to make much better decisions around the types of food that we have, because I want you to be eating food that's going to make you feel energized and satisfied and not exhausted and depleted. So that's a very individual thing. Some foods are going to make some people feel that, some foods are going to make some people feel really energized and great, and other foods will make people feel exhausted and depleted. So I want you to be able to pick the foods that work really well for you, just knowing that your brain is trying to trick you because you're sleep deprived. Tip number 5 is try not to nap. Again, you're like, wow, this woman is no fun. I'm sorry. I know that a nap can feel amazing when you're exhausted. If you must nap, keep it to a really short one, like 20, 30 minutes. A nap that's longer than that, though, is going to have consequences where it will completely reset your sleep hormones and possibly, probably interfere with your sleep later that night. So as much as you can avoid napping, you can do something else restful like a yoga nidra or a mindfulness activity or a hypnosis activity. They can be really helpful to kind of rest your body and kind of reset your mind without resetting your whole sleep or circadian cycle. So as much as you can, avoid having a nap. And number 6 is going to bed roughly the same time that evening. It can be really tempting when you're exhausted and you didn't sleep the night before to go climb into bed at 7 o'clock. The problem with that is back to this whole idea of your circadian rhythm. And so number one, it can kind of shift your rhythm and make your body think you're in a different time zone. But number 2, if you go to bed too early, your body can treat it like a nap. So if you end up in bed at 7 o'clock and you sleep soundly and then you're wide awake at 9 o'clock because your body thinks it's done its nap because it doesn't think it was ready for bed for the night, now you've completely offset your sleep cycle for the rest of that night, and you might be facing the same challenge. So if you can go to bed at roughly the same time, or what would be a reasonable time, it can be a little bit earlier, 30 minutes, an hour earlier, that's usually fine. But if you can keep it to roughly the same time to go to bed that night, you're going to be so much better off. Sleep debt. So this idea that we don't get enough sleep in one particular day or over a period of time, sleep debt can be really hard to make up. And sometimes people have this idea that they can just, get by on the week and 4 hours of sleep a night and then make it up on the weekends. And it doesn't really work like that. Sleep is kind of seen on each night being an individual thing. So the focus is that we always want to aim to have a good sleep each night. That's not realistic. Everybody is going to have a bad night's sleep here and there, and that's totally normal. The good news is that you can kind of reset yourself that night and get yourself set up to have a good night's sleep, because you can have a really terrible night's sleep, but the next night you have a good night's sleep, and the next night you have a good night's sleep. And you do, to some degree, make up some of that sleep debt. But when we experience chronic sleep deprivation over an extended period of time, that can be a much harder sleep debt to work out. And so that is where I would suggest, if you are experiencing, long-term problems with falling asleep or staying asleep, or you're waking up too early, send me a message, because this is what I focus on. This is what I help busy moms sort of fix. And one of the things that I'm offering is a sleep assessment call. So this is a free 45-minute call where you and I can get on a call and just chat about your sleep. What are your big hurdles? What are some things you could do to get yourself sorted out? So if you have any questions about sleep, you want some tips to help sleep, if this is sounding all too familiar to you, that you're just up a lot all night, every night, and you're exhausted, send me a note, let's connect, and we'll help you get that sorted out. I hope you have a great day and that you sleep really well tonight.